Okay, well today is the first page that I'm going to do where I believe I've fully figured out the audio video problems. So cross your fingers, knock on wood, that it's true, I have figured it out. Alright, so before we start our page today, and I want to do, again, I should have washed my hands, again, I want to work on layering. Because I think that there's so many different ways to approach layering that I want to show a variety of them to you, so that you're not concerned that the one way that I showed you, like say I only showed you one page with, talking about layering, maybe that particular type of page isn't your thing. You won't get enough out of it. And I know that I have my certain things that I don't like to do. The one that pops into my head immediately is colored pencil. I hate colored pencil. I hate drawing with colored pencil. I hate trying to paint with colored pencil. I just can't stand colored pencil. And it has nothing to do with how it looks. I mean, I see other colored pencil artists work and I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. But for me, as an artist working with that medium, it's tedious. I can achieve the results twice as fast, just as good with paint. So, every technique isn't for everybody. And every way of layering isn't going to be for everybody. So far I think I've shown you, well, 2 pages that were specifically layering. The last page I did, I got a little crazy and just wanted to show you using layering to actually, and scraps to create a page. But I wanted to do another one about layering. And I'm actually, you probably have noticed by now through this class, we're just past the halfway point now, that I never just sit down and teach you a single technique in a page. I try to teach a variety of different things with every page I do, so that way, if you don't have that medium, or if one of those things isn't to your taste, there's still things for you to take away from each lesson. So a couple of days ago I showed you how to transfer paint from plastic bags. If you didn't have all the medium, or the specific medium or the right printer to do the transfer, you still took something else away, which was how to paint onto plastic and use that to transfer paint. I do that. I try to do that with every lesson. So with this one, I'm going to approach layering again, but I'm going to throw a couple of techniques in there. Well, I'm going to throw a technique in there that's really versatile, so I'll show you a few ways to use it. And then I'm also going to throw in a little bit of a teaching moment about inspiration. There's been a lot of talk in this class about copying and not copying the teacher, being worried about copying the teacher. And there's been some internet conversation. Again, the topic comes up all the time. A new student or a new teacher comes on the scene and suddenly there's this discussion about copyright, or someone gets all up in arms because they feel someone's copycatted them. I'm not immune to that. It's happened to me, as far as me thinking someone's copycatted me, or me being involved in a situation where I know, in fact, in one case I knew both parties of the argument, which was really, really, really hard because I'm like trying not to upset either of my friends. And I actually opted out of that conversation entirely. I refused to discuss it because these 2 people were my friends, as artists separately. So I just didn't want to get involved. But anyway, so I thought I would talk a little bit about inspiration, because I think that's one of the things that we all get kind of caught up in, is how do you see something that you love that another artist has done, and that can include your teachers, obviously, want to be inspired by it, but not really sure, okay, how to extrapolate inspired from crap, this person's going to come back later and, accuse me of copying them. And I've said this in the comments already, that I don't believe a student can copy a teacher, and why, that's kind of, I think that statement requires explanation. If you sat down and you replicated, take this page for instance, whether it be something that I'm teaching you or just something that you saw online. If you sat down and you carefully extrapolated every single thing I did, every single color I used, every technique I used, and you drew out every flower so that it looked precisely the way my flowers did, and so on and so forth, until the point where basically, it probably would have been faster and easier to just take a picture of it and, blow it up journal page size. That's probably copying. And if you were to do that, say for instance with class materials, and then you were to take that and you were to go out there and post it and say, gee, look what I made, don't you love it? And 14 people wrote in and said, my gosh, you're just so amazing and creative. And you never at any point in time ever said, well, actually, gee, this is, something I just learned in class, and, or this is the class I learned it, or this is the teacher. If you never try to give that credit back to that person who truly inspired you, maybe you're copycatting. Maybe you should think about it, because, you're actually taking away from yourself by doing that. You're taking away from that experience, that relationship with the art and the teacher and the teaching and what you've learned. I'm not saying that you have to give credit. I'm sorry, but I don't think you do. You paid to take a class. So as far as I'm concerned, if you pay to take a class, you are paying to learn that information. If you then turn around and use that information, you don't have... you paid for it. If I buy a car, I expect to be able to drive it down the road. And every time someone says, hey, I love your car, I don't want to go, oh yeah, I got it at. Maybe I want to do that because I love that dealership or that salesperson, and I want, to help them, but I don't have to, and I don't feel obligated to. And sometimes I didn't like that salesperson, even though I do like my car, or I didn't like that dealership. I can talk a lot about that. And so I don't want to give them customers. I don't want to spread their name. So I may not. I may just say, hey, gee, thanks, I love my, insert model of car, or insert brand of car, or just car. So there's not, I don't believe that there's an absolute, you have to do this type of situation. With any kind of teaching. It doesn't just, I don't just have experience teaching art. I have a lot of experience teaching web design, web development, programming, organization. In my previous corporate career, I was called upon, to stand up in front of a room and teach hundreds of people who were far and beyond ahead of me, how my department does what they do, or the various skills that I was exceptional at. I worked for a really wonderful company, and they were very good at seeing skills in someone and utilizing that by having that person teach. So I have a lot of teaching experience. When I stand up and I teach, 50 executives how to organize their day, I don't think that every time someone says, wow, you're so organized, they got to go, oh yeah, that's because, Christy in, the online department taught me how. What? No, it doesn't make sense. And so if something doesn't make sense to you, don't follow it. And if something doesn't feel good to you, don't follow it. Now, all of that said, obviously, it's a nice thing to give credit where credit's due. It really is. And it creates a really positive feeling. I know as a teacher that it creates a positive feeling for me when I see online somewhere, one of my students had something nice to say about me. And the best thing you can say is when you refer your teacher, to other students. That means that I get to go on teaching because I get to have more students and I can make more classes, and et cetera, et cetera. But all of this stuff is really just... I think anyway, it's just common sense. You know what I mean? It just, so don't stress about it. If you learn stuff, you learn a technique in my class, I fully expect you to go use it. I fully expect to see you, if it's the direction you want to go in, selling art. And I want to, I expect to see within that, art that you're selling, maybe, a thing here or there that reflects the, the things you learned in your class. I think that's just, me and the way I teach. I want to see that. I want to know. I want to be able to celebrate your achievements, the things that you've learned, and your successes in this. Gosh, how amazing is it to think that, you guys go and have it a success, and maybe I had a little bitty something to do with that. That's pretty darn awesome. So take it for what it is. That's, how I view it. the only time I have ever had a situation where I have felt uncomfortable about copyright is there are a few people out there, in our mixed media art journaling world who are competitive teachers to me, who I don't know. I don't have relationships with them. They're not students of mine. They've never even, spoken to me. And I see them, directly using something that, they got access to, usually because I can't stop from oversharing. And I see them taking it before I got a chance to, and making a name for themselves off of something that really they would probably not have gotten to that idea without my help. That can kind of bother me. But let's be honest, ideas aren't copyrightable. And if I put my ideas out there so that I can find students like you guys, and that means another teacher might take that idea, faster than I could and be more successful with it, that's just part of life. That's just part of online life and, teaching online. And so, although I might get caught up in that every once in a while, that feeling, it says more about me and my inability to not overshare than it does to the person that I'm frustrated with, because I think maybe they've kind of copied. So, take all of that sort of conversation that you hear with a grain of salt, because even if it happens to me and, I get a little, my nose a little out of joint, that's my own problem, actually. That's not the problem of the other person. And I'm not proud of, the few times that it has happened to me. Mind you, it hasn't happened a lot. It used to happen to me all the time because I, was somewhat not used to it. In the corporate field that I came from, we didn't run around and do that. But then again, a lot of other online managers that didn't work for my company weren't exactly letting me in the door of their online departments to see how they were coding things and how they were designing things. We kept our secrets to ourselves. So, that was more of a learning curve on my part to learn how to keep my stuff to myself until I was ready to give it, to share it with students. And that way, my students could learn it first. Oh boy, did I just go on and on with that one, didn't I? Okay. I want to include a really awesome technique that I don't know if there's a proper name for it or if I'm using the right name, but I call it paper piercing. And I'm not sure, I didn't turn the monitor, of course. I'm not sure if you can see, but can you see all the little holes that I have pierced around here? When you're looking at the page, they're so there, they're obvious, and they really give this awesome, fun, interesting feeling to the page. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can do paper piercing, and I want to show you a couple of them here. One that I am not going to show you, so I'm just going to talk about it, is using a sewing machine that doesn't have any thread in it, and running around and outlining things with just the perforations of the needle. And that can really be interesting and fun if you have the type of machine where you have a lot of different decorative stitches, because you can create punched borders and things that aren't real obvious. They're a little bit subtle, but yet they're beautiful. So I want to show you some paper piercing. Now, because we're doing something that's a little bit more specific, it's going to have some specific tools that I don't know that everyone has. I'm looking for my awl. What did I do with it? It might require supplies that you don't have, excuse me, typically in your studio. I don't have a lot of just the regular paper punches. In fact, I have a couple that I hate because they don't work very well. So I don't even know where they are. I might have actually gotten so mad with them I threw them away. I do have a lot of border punches because I love to punch borders. Not borders, I'm sorry, corners. I have a lot of corner punches because I love to punch corners. But there's only 4 corners on the page, and I'm not going to bother with that. I mean, if you've got one, then you know. I love to round the edges of my pages the most. in my journals. But I do have one border punch that I picked up recently, and I really enjoy it. So I'm going to use that as an example. And then as far as the singular paper piercing, I like to use a variety of sizes. Now this is just a tapestry needle. It's not, incredibly sharp, but this one is a little bit pointed. And then this is my awl, which I use for bookbinding when I need to punch holes, and this gives me a nice fat hole. That's the what I use to do this punching here. But then this is another type of an awl, and I actually have broken it. The point's supposed to come out of this metal piece here, but I broke it, so I shoved it in the other end, and I tried to glue it, and it's quite ineffective, and so I had to just get a real less old-fashioned awl. But this one I like because the punch is really small. It's like a larger sized embroidery needle. That's about the size hole it punches. But you can use any type of needle. You can use little embroidery needles or anything else that you can use to pierce paper. I mean, I even have a hole punch that's just used to punch holes in what am I trying to say? Like rubber gaskets and things for plumbing. I even have one of those, or I have one that's for punching holes in metal. So all different kinds of paper, things you can use and tools you could probably find right around your house to pierce paper. But these are the three: my awl and this little needle-sized punch. Awl, and then this border punch. Those are the ones I'm going to show you. And then when you're thinking about punching holes, there's actually, if you start getting kind of creative in your thought processes, or just opening your mind to hole punching. There's so many different things you can hole punch with. You can hole punch like I've done here around a design. For any of you who are using silhouette type of stencils, and I know that body people silhouettes are real popular right now. I made silhouettes I like silhouettes out of animals, which I think one of the students used. She did an elephant, I think, and I was like, I think I'm not the only one who loves silhouettes of animals, so I'm not going to bother. So I was going to do a page with that, but no point, because I think a lot of people already are doing it. But I love silhouettes of animals, far more than I do people. But if you have silhouette stencils, or even if you just sit down and cut out, interesting faces out of magazines, think about profiles, because profiles are really awesome to cut out and use as masks and stencils. And I haven't seen a lot of people doing profiles, but they're a lot more fun even than just like a body stencil. But anyway, you can not only just simply hole punch around or inside of your stencil if you have some, but you can also spray ink and then hole punch or paper punch around what you spraying. So that's an idea, something to think about. Another thing that you can do is if you use a piece of cardstock for your hole punching, you can spray through it. So I'm sure you can, hopefully you can see that, and hopefully it's the camera's bringing it into view. Again, that was what I did here, was I sprayed through it. Here is where I used my paper punch, and then I actually just glued paper to the reverse side. But that would look just, pretty awesome too if it was just laid down and left alone, because you would see the next page through it. And obviously, we've kind of already talked about, or I've shown you cutouts. So that's another good idea. Another thing is that paper punching gives really awesome texture. That's the reverse side. I paper punched the other side of it, and then I glued it down, and then I just, rubbed paint and gold metallics and stuff over it. So something else to think about is it gives you really awesome texture. Now, along with using a silhouette type of stencil, you can also paper punch with just some regular types of stencils. I paper punched using a few of these little holes, and then I filled in with these circles. That's how I got this design here. And then when I was done with it, because I did some pattern cardstock that I punched the holes in. when I was finally done with spraying through it, I cut out a heart and glued it down, and it looks pretty neat because not only is it patterned paper, but you can see those holes also that were punched through it. So there's a lot of really fun things you can do with it, and you don't have to worry, or you shouldn't worry, I guess, about the other side of the page, because you can just layer paper over it, which I did here, and go on building your page, or you can use it because, like I said, that's some really awesome texture. So if I just take some metallic paint, like I've got a what is this color? This is just their regular Pearl Copper. This is their airbrush, acrylic airbrush ink. It's just like a fluid paint, metallic paint. But I just put some on my finger, and then I'm just going to rub over it, and you can just see how where it's raised, it pulls the color, and then around it you get an area that doesn't get a lot of color because it's, around the raised area. So, you can actually use it to your advantage if you've paper punched on the other side, or you can just cover it up. It's up to you. But, so I thought I would do some examples about paper punching along with, obviously, our more typical layering type of page. And I'm actually going to use the girl that I did one of my transfers from. This is the leftover piece of paper that I was left with after I pulled it off for doing the transfer. So for those of you who your transfers didn't work from the page the other day, I hope you held on to them. If not, don't think next time about holding on to it, because you can still use this as a layer, as collage in your journal. And my printer's out of ink, so I can't print anything new. So I'm like, I'll use this. My printer, as I've talked about before with you guys, is the type of printer that has CMYK, so it actually has 4 different ink colors. Well, if one of them runs out, it will not print. So right now I'm out of magenta, which is red. I can't even print anything black and white. Even though I don't need to use the red, it won't work. And that's the only downside to the type of printer that I have. And I probably should have hung on to one of my older printers as a backup, but I didn't think to do it, so I don't have one. Now, I want to talk, as I said, I wanted to talk about how to use other journal pages or artwork or what you learned from a teacher, whatever it is. I wanted to talk about some appropriate ways, or at least, ways that, in my opinion, I try to always bring it back, back down just to me, so that way I'm not, making rules and stuff, because I hate that. But in my opinion, a really great way to get inspiration from other artists without being the type of person who has, not the type of person, but getting yourself into a situation where you're like, am I copying? I don't know, I'm scared, what do I do? There's ways to get that inspiration. I don't buy a lot of picture-based books, and this particular book has no actual instructional value. This is 1,000 Artist Journal Pages by Dawn DeVries Sokol. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. This book's entire purpose is to inspire you. And I've actually seen a couple of situations where someone was accused of, I think that person copied directly out of this book. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's a book about inspiration. People are going to be inspired to create based on the things they see in this book. So I thought that conversation was ludicrous. But anyway, one of the really awesome, fun things that I like to do with books like this is to flip through the pages, and when I see a page that really attracts me, try to think of, what is it about this page that, is pulling me in. So in this case, this page, the thing that most attracts me is the multiple colors. I'm a color fanatic, so obviously color is going to always be something that's a big inspiration for me. And it's going to catch my eye. Specifically, what catches my eye is this blue, beautiful blue here, and then the light, you know, the way that this part is lighter than anything else in this image. You know, that grabs me. This grabs me obviously because there's flowers there, but yet they're flowers that are made up of nothing but circle drawings. You know, that really grabs my eye. It also grabs my eye because there's purple there, and I love purple. Well, one of the things I like to do is to go through, and when I find a page that I really, really like, and I realize that the reason that I like it isn't the actual imagery that's in it. So like this is a good one because there's not even all that much imagery in here, but something I like about this page. Well, what is it? For me, it's the color. It's the color combination or the color palette. Another thing is I love color so much, and I love all color, that I have a hard time sometimes not coming up with a color palette, because obviously I can just grab 10 colors and there you go, I've got a color palette. But sometimes I want to be inspired to limit my use of color. Not limit it as in any of the particular colors, or not limit it necessarily that I want it muted or anything like that. But just, you know, sometimes I can actually overwhelm myself a little bit because I love color so much and I use every color in the rainbow. So I see a page like this and I realize, you know, hey, of the different things I love about this page, I really love the colors. So I will sit down when I'm looking for inspiration, and I do this with, you know, actual paintings that I'm painting. I was doing this the other night for oil painting. I am actually a little bit limited in the in-bottle colors that I have. In other words, you know, not having to mix to get a color. Because I only have so many oil paints. I think I want to say if I put out every color I have, I probably have 10 colors total. And oil paints can be very, compared to acrylic paints, very expensive. So because I am limited, I mean, obviously I can mix any color I want, but when it comes to mixing, I don't sit down and go, okay, you know, I'm going to take this color and just start mixing until I get something, you know. And most of the time if I'm mixing to get a color. So I'm mixing because I want to have, you know, a muted orange or a burnt red, or in my case I think of it as barn red. But when I'm mixing, I don't mix just for play in seeing what I get. I mix in order to get a color. So I have a little bit more, I have to think a little harder when I want to come up with a color palette for a painting. And this is a really fun way for me to come up with color palettes to use. So of the various different pages that I was looking at, I'll just read out some of them. Like this particular page, whatever page it was, I don't make a note of the page. They used blue, black, off-white, and white. That was all they used, those 4 colors. And really they're only just using blue, black, and white because, you know, off-white, they're just, you know, it's just a tint of white. So that was like a 3-color page, but it really attracted me. You know, this one was a lot different because they were using off-white, white. I wrote warm color. What on earth was I talking about? That one's obviously not going to be of use to me. Warm brown, barn red, and black. This one they used a medium inky blue, white, red, green, black, and they accented with gold. I ended off because I was really tired. I was getting sleepy. I was doing this just like at the end of the night, and the last one that I wrote down and said, you know, I'm gonna paint with that was a really warm off-white, a deep pink, but not a hot pink, a deep pink, black and gray together. White obviously with the black and gray, and then they used a really warm gold as an accent. As soon as I happened upon, you know, not looking at that page as much as reading those colors back to myself, I thought, I want to paint that. I want to paint with that. That's going to be, you know, my next color palette. So I'll show you, just, you know, in case you're going, my brain hurts. I'll show you how I come up with that. Now, I mean, there's a lot of colors here. I'm not going to pick every color. I'm going to try to go with the feeling from this. And for me, what I'm getting from this page is white, because there's quite a bit of white in here. And then off-white, because they've mixed some yellows and some sepias to get an off-white. They've got a nice gold or a golden yellow, which is also just like a medium hued yellow. They have some burnt sienna. Now that could also be, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and say burnt umber, because I'm betting that it's coming from that color right there. That's what they're getting. So they've got some burnt umber in here, and then obviously they've got black in it. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, because that is definitely, this and this, they look like burnt umber, but this definitely does look like burnt sienna. And I got a feeling as an accent, they've used burnt sienna. That's what I would take away from this page. So the colors I've written down are white, off-white, gold, burnt umber, black, and then burnt sienna as an accent. And that kind of says, you know, reads to me this page. Now I can then extrapolate this, you know, close the book. I don't even know who the artist is. I'll give credit here. The artist is Kristen, oh goodness, Livelsberger. Beautiful name, beautiful page. But I don't even need to look at this book again. This is just a piece of paper that has, in my opinion, color palette ideas. So I can come back later and I can say, you know, I really want to use white, off-white, gold, burnt umber, black, and accent with some burnt sienna for a page. And that is 100% inspired by Kristen's page. And yet, I don't think if I, you know, if I go make a page with this color palette, I'm pretty positive I'm never going to meet Kristen and she's never going to come back and go, you ripped my page off. You know what I mean? I wasn't trying to copy her. I just want to be inspired by her. And when I looked at her page, my inspiration read out, you know, what inspired me, and what that read out to me was her use of color and color as a color palette. So that's, in my opinion, a appropriate way to be inspired by another art journal artist. There are many more appropriate ways, and we'll see whether or not the pages that I work on will give us opportunity to come back here again and to talk more about it. But I hope that that helps, you know, someone a little bit with that sort of, you know, feeling, that maybe even stressful moment that you kind of get to where you're like, did I, you know, can I do this? Am I copying? What am I doing? Uh-oh, you know, I mean, so hopefully that helps a little bit. Now, in light of that conversation, I want to go ahead, I think, and use one of these in our page today. And since you got to see Kristen's page, so you kind of have an idea what it looks like, I'm going to go with Kristen's color palette here. So I'm just going to grab those colors and put away the Myrud 1 million bottles that I have out that are not those colors. And this is actually a pretty interesting color palette for me because there's no pink, no purple, no blue, no teal. So this will be pretty interesting for me. So let's see, of the ones I'm about to put away, I've got black and I've got white gesso up here on my desk. I have off-white that's already mixed. If you want to mix off-white, just use a nice soft yellow and mix that into white. And then the gold I'm going to go with is this one called King's Gold. You can also go with my favorite gold from a traditional color palette. And by that I mean some of the older traditional colors. This one is yellow ochre. It's pretty much, you know, the same color. I'm just lazy, and this is a heavy body, which means it's really thick. And I always have to water it down, or, you know, use glazing medium or matte medium or something to make it more fluid. So when it comes to using my art journal, like painting in my art journal, I'm lazy and tend to paint out of the bottle. Whereas with paintings, I use the more traditional colors and paint more out of mixing and using my traditional palette. Let's see, what else I need to locate. Burnt umber, white, off-white, gold, black, burnt umber, and burnt sienna. Bear with me just a second. I'm digging and looking and putting away. umber. What do I got here? This is burnt umber. It's just a deep brown. Not my favorite color because it doesn't make a nice brown in my opinion, and so I always have to mix it a lot. These are almost empty, and so I'm going to have 2 of them because I'm not sure how much paint's in either one of them. I should have a burnt sienna in a craft size bottle. Hang on, just bear with me just a minute. What color is that? Burnt sienna. Okay, so that's the end of our colors. That's all the colors we need. That's our color palette for the day. That's an interesting color palette for me. Difficult for me to work with probably. I'm going to use white gesso and black gesso also if I need other colors. So I can actually put this aside and we'll see how long I manage to stick to that color palette before I mess up and add a different color. And I want to do not fancy cutting by any means. I just want to cut her out a little bit. I'm lucky in so much as she's a good image for a color palette like that because she is very much oriented around nature with all of the leaves and the little berries and things that, you know, she lends herself well to this kind of a color palette. So I'm kind of lucky in that. But she would look just as good in blues and light greens and pinks. And now one issue that I do have is that I don't have any spray inks to speak of that are going to fit that color palette. I do have yellow, and I think somewhere, let me go on the hunt and see if I have any. I think I have black somewhere. This might be black spray ink. I definitely don't really have a burnt sienna. I need to test somewhere, so let me move this out of the way and get a page that I can test spray on. Nah, not really. That's pretty pink. It's not going to work. What else do I have in here? No, and no. Going to be pretty limited, I think, down to paint for the most part. Slate. I do have slate. I don't have it as a spray. I have it in an applicator bottle, but I can use that for some creative differences. And then I think I'm going to actually go with some gouache because I do have burnt sienna, burnt umber, black. What is this? This is yellow ochre. That does pretty much work. Yellow ochre. And then I'm going to use cream for the off-white, and then I have white, which I probably won't use. But that's my color palette in gouache, which is a form of watercolor. And that's acrylic gouache, by the way. That's does make a difference, I believe. But I don't have a whole lot of experience with using gouache. Now, another product that I haven't used a lot of in this class is these water-soluble oil pastels. So let's see what I have here, because I know I've got slate gray, which actually, this is funny, because this is marked slate gray, but hello, if you have eyeballs, this is not gray. That is as blue can be. Drives me nuts. That drives me nuts. Of all the things that bug me, that bugs me. As far as I'm concerned, that does not read anywhere near the color they're talking about. Now, that's not really a burnt umber. It's too light of a brown. Might not have many of these that I can really do too much with. I don't like the yellows. This actually is like a combination of burnt sienna. That looks like burnt sienna to me. And this one I think is a lot, yeah, a lot like that. So I'm going to use that as kind of like my yellow, somewhere in between. And that looks like burnt sienna to me too, but I don't really probably need more than one. Okay, so there you go. These are the supplies that I may or may not end up using. We'll see. I'm going to put this away now. Now, one of the things that I think reads really well when you're doing layering and you're using a really limited palette is repetition of symbolism. So I'm going to try to do that in a couple of different ways. The first one is I'm going to try to use a couple of stencils at various different points that are going to be repeated, thus giving me repetition. I am actually turned around the other way and digging, so I apologize. Bear with me just a minute, and I think I'm going to go with let's see. I think I'm going to go with little squares. I want to kind of try to stay small, I think, a bit today. I wonder, no, I think I'm going to just stick with that. So this is going to be, you know, my basic repetitive symbolism is going to be squares and circles. I'm hoping that will translate well into the rest of the page. You know what, though? She's got these leaves right here, and I can't resist playing with those or with that concept. So I'm going to go with this one, too, because I can use these very much in that leaf shape that she has going on there. So those are going to be my symbols. And, you know, this wasn't obviously, you know, in any way pre-planned. This just kind of came together just right now, right? So keep that in mind as you're working. You don't have to, like, you know, carefully plan everything. So today I want to start, obviously, with our background. And if I am pulling back out of my mind, well, that page that we were looking at, her background was very much the white and the yellow ochre and some grays. So I'm going to start, I think, with, because I do want to do, you know, several layers or levels of it. So I'm going to start with my oil pastel yellow, and just, you know, true to form like we've done before, I'm kind of just going to start with a flood of color. And I'm going to use this white to help get me a couple of different types of the yellow, I think. And because this is a watercolor based product, it will lift again as I add moisture to it. So I'm going to put some of this down, but I know that I can manipulate it as I go. And I'm going to put some cream. And cream can be also, you can also think of off-white or cream as Titan Buff. They call this cream, but really it's kind of like a Titan Buff. And then I think I'll throw some white in just for fun, but more than likely you will see me using up that, my brain just stopped for a second, white gesso that I bought because it was really cheap. So why waste my other whites when I can use up something cheap? Because I'm cheap, no? Alright, I'm going to start with spray ink. Before I start adding water and mixing, because some of the spray ink will move, but some of it will stain. I don't think we're going to get black today either, because this isn't really spraying well. Now this is an alcohol-based spray, and they don't recommend that you use alcohol anymore as sprays. So I haven't been making any more. So this is just the last of whatever I had pre-made before everyone started having a fit and saying, you know, safety issue. And I don't like to buck the safety issues. I'm good with that. I'll be safe. So you know, I stopped making them, but I just need to rinse out my brush really good here, or give it up and get a new one because that one's really, really dirty. All right, so I'm gonna get a new brush, and I'm actually gonna move some stuff around over here so that I can get my paint palette opened. I've been doing so much painting at night with my oil paints that I haven't been painting with my acrylics hardly at all. I almost miss my paint palette. Okay, so now I'm just going to make a mess. I'm just going to blend all of this stuff together. And assumably, for the most part, I'm going to get a creamy yellow-white page overall as my background. Or at least, you know, the beginnings of my background. You know, now I put some of this stuff down and I let it, it sat and dried a bit as I worked. So some things are going to move a lot. Some aren't going to move at all. I really love the randomness of this type of working this way. I really enjoy it being nice and random like that. So now I'm just going to make sure that I've kind of, you know, spread everything around. I don't have any really heavy, thick spots. And now I'm going to get my white gesso. Oops, don't. Hopefully I'm not going to spill it. I'm going to get some white gesso and some black gesso because some of those colors were very much, you know, grays, of different types of grays, different shades of gray, and then different shades of the white and the yellow. So a good way to get that is to play with gesso because it can be a little bit transparent. So I'm actually just going to paint out of the lid a bit. And I'm going to use this to do some solid color blocking, some slightly translucent color blocking. I might use it to create some of those circles that we want to repeat. I don't know where the focal image is going to go at this point, so I don't have any, you know, predestined areas that I want to, you know, save or protect or, you know, fuss about. I'm just going to get rid of the last of the white that I have on here. I'm actually going to go into a little bit of water. So I got a little bit of a wash of white going on. And there's no reason why you can't go back and forth. I'm actually going to swap and use two different brushes so I don't have to work as hard to rinse the white and the black out. So now I'm going to use a different a different brush for the black. And again, I'm just going to move it all around. It's going to blend with the white that I already had down, hopefully, like it's doing here. Then I might add some white with it so that I know I'm going to get a little bit of gray happening. Get that black off of that brush by using it. Maybe add some water and move those two colors a little bit together. Maybe I will, again, this is being, you know, very random about it, not, you know, not thinking too hard or for too long, because if you do, that's when it stops being really organic. Now I'm going to use some, like I said, squares and circles, so those are kind of my colors. So I'm just going to paint a little bit of gesso down onto this little foamy homemade stamp. These are foam dots that you're supposed to use to make your creations layering 3D. And I just said, oh, that'd make a really cool stamp if I pulled a few off and etc., etc. So I'm going to do that. And then I've got another one, same product, except for this time it was little circles. And again, I just used it as a stamp, as I really like the way it looks when it's put down. And I could use both sides. I just haven't bothered to experiment with the other side too much. I kind of don't want to put my hand onto it when it's really soaking wet. Not that I mind getting messy, I don't. And I pulled the circles off over here, so that gives a bit of a different look. I don't know if you can really see it that well though. The paper's pretty wet and it's pretty saturated. I'm going to need to dry it soon. Again, same product, this time much smaller squares. And again, this time I left everything on there. And this one's really fun because I left that shiny, silky paper that you're supposed to peel off. And when I stamp down like this, it tends to transfer. It didn't this time, but sometimes it'll transfer the layers of paint that are built up on it already unexpectedly down onto my page. And I'm actually just going to stamp into that because there's a lot of thick, wet paint there, and then just try to transfer it. I also want to use my little stencils here. Now this is just a piece of my art journal page, the little, edge. That's all this is. And I'm just going to lay it down kind of like a mask and then just put paint over it. And then I'm actually going to lift it up and move it and do black. But again, it's not going to be 100% black because I've got white, so it's going to mix a bit. But I like that transition that happens there. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm really just playing, to be honest with you. There's no rhyme or reason why I'm doing any of the things that I'm doing. I'm just having fun. And then you can even transfer the paint off. This is how do I say it? This is the type of experimentation that I do a lot. The reason why I journal, I'm as prolific of an art journaler as I am, is because I never get out scrapbook paper or scrap paper and say, okay, I'm going to play. No, I get my journal out and say, okay, I'm going to play. That's just, how I experiment. And that's why I'm so prolific, because I play a lot. And because I use my journal as play, there are a lot of finished pages that end up, that are the result of play. There was no initial intent. Whoopsie. Oh, you can also layer stencils. I'm sure you know this by now. For really fun effects, just layer your stencils one over top of the other. It doesn't work as effectively when you're doing circles together. So like a good example, a different example is taking these squares, putting the circles down, putting some color on the squares, and stamping through the stencil. And my page is so wet that it ripped. Oh, well, darn, you didn't get to see that. I'll do it again on another layer. So that kind of is like a heads up that I better dry this page, or I'm just going to keep ripping it. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've been talking for long enough that I'm going to go ahead and stop the video and see whether or not I had any audio issues while I let this dry. And then I'll come back once it's good and dry. I don't know if that'll be a few minutes or a little longer, so I'm going to put my lids back on. And then we'll start working on a second layer of this. This isn't by any means a finished background. So we're going to do a lot more. But I'm going to let it dry. And I will be back momentarily for you guys. Okay, that first talky bit Turned out to be a 57-minute long video, and guess what? Not a single audio problem in the entire thing. Yay! So it's 100% definitely fixed. Now, I took a moment to just kind of like, look at the page while I was super heat drying it. Oh, another tip I'm going to throw out there to you guys, because I love to give little tiny tips as well. This is just a paint rag. If you're super dry, if you're trying to fast dry pages that are really, really wet, put a cloth down. It really soaks in the moisture and allows the paper to dry a lot faster. So that's just a little tiny tip. All right, because that original talkie video was so very long, I need to, kind of hurry a little bit and get this background phase done, or you guys will be watching video for hours on end. I want you to be captivated by the class, but I don't want you to feel like a prisoner. All right, so I'm going to move on to paint, and I'm going to use my off-white and my white gesso, because the original inspiration page, one of the things I loved about the color combo was that it was so very light, so the darks really popped a lot. And I got this page, this background, because I was having so much fun showing you different things. I got it really, really dark. So I want to really lighten it up. So I'm just going to get pretty painterly here and just start, really obliterating a lot of this black. Now the off-white that I'm using is a craft paint, and it's pretty opaque. If I want it to be a little less opaque, I can just add water in places, maybe a lot of water, and then I start getting more of a wash, and that gets me a lot more translucency. Another thing is, if you get it down there and you think, wow, it's too opaque, lift some of it off. Just get a paper towel, or in this case, my paint rags. My favorite paint rags are actually paper based. And that kind of actually smeared a little bit of the black, I think. But there's a couple of different ways. Another way is completely rinse your brush, have it really soaking wet, and just dip into the paint a little bit, but mostly water, and you can get a nice wash that way. I don't want to obliterate everything. I want grays in there. I just don't want a lot of heavy black. So I do want to leave a little bit of this transparent enough that you can still see some of the blacks as kind of a gray. So I'm just going to use the gesso at this point, because I also want white along with the off-white and the hint of gold. So I'm just going to touch up any last areas that I feel need to be covered over. I'm going to leave that as it is. It's a little bit strong, but I like it, having just a little bit of that. So I am going to leave that one spot alone. Now, as I've already taught you, one of the best ways to make your layering, pump up your layering, I guess you would say, or make it, more fun, is to put something that will protect the layer that you have down as well. It's kind of thick right here. I just need to, I don't necessarily want it to not be as opaque. I just don't want the paint to be quite so thick. So I'm just trying to thin it out by spreading it out a little bit. Is to use, like a matte medium. It's something that will seal the paper. Also, this is going to be very beneficial at this point, because I can see there are quite a few places where I've put so much water on it and I've rubbed at it so much with the brush that it's starting to peel up a little bit. The paper is. So I'm just going to throw some matte medium over it. We're going to clean up some of this watery mess I've made. Some matte medium over it and let that dry, and that way it'll seal this first layer. It'll act as a protector for the paper itself, and it will help prep it for gluing images and things down to it. Now, there is one thing I want to mention. It's along the lines, I guess, of that little tip thing again. If you like to use watercolor-based products, which, I started out with quite a few of those, and I want to use those again later on. There are several mediums that will help you with that. If you're combining products like acrylics or acrylic mediums such as matte medium, you know, you do lose the tooth or the texture of the original paper. You also lose the absorbency from the original paper. So, and there's the phone. Hold on, let me get rid of the phone. My husband can call me at the most inopportune moments. He's just got the best radar for when I'm trying to video and talk. Golden, and there are other companies I think that make the same product, but I actually ordered this on accident. I was trying to order white gesso, and somehow it was on the same page, and I managed to click the button for absorbent ground white. So this is an absorbent ground, and what it basically does, and I'm just going to read the label to you: useful for creating acrylic and traditional watercolor washes on gessoed surfaces. Used with golden fluid acrylics and acrylic flow release for intense staining effects. But what it also, it's an absorbent ground. So what it also does is allow you to use watercolors and things over it. I'm going to kill him. He knows full well that if I don't answer the phone right away, the reason I'm not answering it is because I'm recording, and yet he still will do that to me. And I know it's not an emergency, because if it was an emergency, my parents would be walking across the street by now. Okay, so anyway, you can use this to help you use watercolors and things like that over top of it. You can also use this as a primer if you want to prime paper, to use oil paints with it. But in this particular use today, what I want to do is put a layer of this down over top of once this matte medium dries, so that I can use more of the watercolor based products again. I'm not going to show you the process. Well, I mean, I'm going to show you a tiny bit because I want you to see what it looks like. It looks like watered down gesso or watered down white paint. So this is still pretty wet, so I'm just going to do a tiny little space somewhere. But so like right here, I'm going to put it down. See how it like is really transparent? It's really translucent. And it's got a funky texture to it when you're putting it down. It retains that same texture when it's dry. But I'm not going to go through all that on video. This is the end of our actual background, you know, to start out our page. This is the end of our background phase. So tonight, when I get done talking to my husband and threatening him because he keeps doing the phone calling thing, he's in so much trouble. I will come back in once this is dry, and I'll put a layer of this absorbent ground over it. Now, you don't have to have this by any means to do this page. And this is a really, you know, product-specific item. So I don't want you to make you feel like, oh, gee, I've got to run out and buy that. The only time that you, I think, should buy this product is if you do you work a lot with, you know, watercolor-based mediums. Or, like in my case, if you use oil paints, that's what I will be using this for predominantly, is, you know, helping to prime my surfaces, paper surfaces to take oil paints. Phew, I tried to get that out as quick as I could. I hope I didn't go so fast that you guys, you know, think I'm becoming hyper. All right, I will see you guys tomorrow with phase 2.